In this video, we are going to investigate several methods within the string class. Your reference for the string class methods would be on Oracle, so this is a good website to reference. The scenario that I am going to work with is that I want to create a strong password from my weak password. Currently, my password is too easy. That is a string. And oftentimes when we create a password, we're asked to add special characters and numbers. So we are going to add those features to our password. So one of the things that helps us is to, and I'm going to use in some of my randomization here, is the length method, which is one of our string methods. So password.length, and then you see here special chars.length are going to return the length of the words. So remember, when we are working with the words, the length of the word is going to be how many characters there are. So for too easy, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters. But also remember, so the length is going to return 7. If we are working on this, the length of this is going to be 7. But one other thing we want to remember is that when we work with strings, it also uses zero indexing. So this is an array of characters. The first one is at the position 0. The next character is at position 1. The next 0 is position 2, and etc. So as I count how many characters there are here, I want you to notice that the last index is always going to be one less than the length of the string. So the last index is always going to be at length minus 1, and we may use that a couple of times in our scenario. While I'm on this screen, I want you to take a look at this list of special characters. So these special characters are a string, and so the exclamation point is at position 0, the at symbol is at 1, and etc. So if I can use my indexing, I am also going to be looking at all of these special characters. Now, it goes 0 through 8, which means the length of that particular string is 9. And we are going to use that in a random number generator. And basically, we're going to say generate a random number using math.random. And we're going to generate a random number from 0 to 8 because we want to pull off any character within here at an index of 0 through 8. So if we go back to our code screen, let's go ahead and get started on creating a strong password. So the first thing that we did was to store our password length in a variable named size. And then this is the code to pull off the position for a random character within our special characters. So it's math.random times special characters.length. So it's going to multiply math.random times 9. And that's going to produce a number from 0 to 8. Math.random returns a double, so I have to cast it as an int. So this random char that I'm choosing here is going to be a random character from our list of special characters that we are going to use a little bit later in our code. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to pull off different parts of our password. We're going to break it into pieces. So we're going to peel off first letter, last letter, and then the middle of our password. To pull off the first letter, we're going to use substring. Substring in Java is a way to peel off portions of a string. And so in this particular example, if I just do 0, 1, and I run this, you're going to see down here that first letter is T. But to understand how substring works, it starts at this index and it goes to but does not include the last index. So the 1 is what we call exclusive. Just to see what it does, let's peel off the substring from 0 to 4. And if I run that, it peels off TOOE, which are the first 4 characters. The characters are at index 0 through 3, however. So it doesn't include the index of the character, it doesn't include the character that's at position 4. It includes the characters at position 0, 1, 2, and 3. So understanding how substring work is going to be useful. And so the first letter is peeled off by starting at position 0 and going up to but not including position 1. This next one is a little trick in order to find the last letter. So the last letter is going to be at an index that's 1 less than the size of the string, And so when I peel off the last letter, I can just do size -1 and it peels off the last letter. This is a form of substring that we use where the substring, when I'm using substring, if I just use substring, and actually let me go ahead and show you just on this. So when we pull off the last letter, let's go ahead and run this. I changed the code to get the first letter. Now the last letter is Y. But to understand how this version of substring is working, what's happening here is whatever index I start at. So let's say I start at index 4. If I run this, it's going to peel off all the characters from the 4th position to the end. So ASY is going to be from the 4th position to the end. So I can use that. So I don't have to have two arguments in substring. I can have a single argument. It starts at that value and then goes to the end of the string. So if I put in size -1 here, it starts at the last index and then goes to the end, which in this case is going to be the last letter. Last but not least, I'm going to use that trick to also then get the middle of the string. So the middle of the string is going to start at index 1 and go up to, but not include, the last index. So I'm going to peel off everything in the middle here with this substring of 1 comma size -1. And so if we run this execution now I've got my first letter, my last letter, and the middle string of the string. And I am going to use that in order to generate a new password. Another thing that we often do with passwords is we make part of it uppercase. So the next few lines of code are going to demonstrate how to change strings to uppercase. And we're going to use the dot to uppercase. And so when I do that, all it's going to do is to change the lowercase to uppercase, as you can see here. A nice feature in Eclipse is that we can have it auto format. Remember, or see here how these are out of line. If I do Control Shift S, it'll reformat for me. So if that ever happens, that's just an FYI. So picking up, now we have our first letter, last letter, middle, and we've changed the middle to all caps. The next thing I want to do is peel off one of those special characters. And so I am going to use a char at command with my string command. And whenever I'm using one of those string methods, you're going to always start with the string that you are utilizing. So I'm using special chars dot character at, and then I'm going to choose a random number from within that string. So one thing that's kind of useful if I were just retyping this and I were to do special is assigned special chars dot. All of the methods in the string library start to show up here. And if I do char at, then it's going to tell me that I need an integer index there. And so my integer index that I'm using is the random character that I previously generated in my code, which is based upon the length of the special characters. So this random character comes from the fact that it's going to count how many characters are here, and it's going to pick an index from 0 to the length of that character. And so you can, when you're working with all of your new string methods, using that dot operator to pull up the format of the method is kind of nice. And then learning how to read this, it gives you some little helping hints over here on the right-hand side as well. Now, one thing we do have to be aware of on this particular one is that returns a character. And when I return a character, that's when I'm converting a string or working with strings. I don't want a character, I want a string. Same thing's going to be true of an integer. When I'm working with, I want my new password to be a string, I'm going to concatenate in a character and an integer. And what happens, we've already talked about this once, is that a character and an integer will be converted to strings when you concatenate. So typically we'd have to worry about the fact that this returns a character, and we'd have to worry about the fact that this returns an integer. But because we're going to use these we're going to use these when we concatenate with a string, we don't have to worry about that. There's going to be what's called automatic casting that is done. So the char is going to get converted to a string, and then the integer will be converted to a string as well. So the char at command peels off a single character, which is how we're going to get our special character. And if I print that out, you can see how this works just real quick. So watch that special character. If I run this a few different times, that special character is changing based upon the string and the position within the string. The random number from password length, I am going to generate a random number based upon the length of my password. So my password length was 8 or 9 or something like that. I don't remember, 6 maybe. So I'm going to generate a random number from 0 through the size. And so that's again using math.random times size. Size is the length of my string, remember. And I have to cast it as an integer. So that's just my way to form a random number that I want to include in my password. If I print that out so you can see what kind of number that generates, it generates, and it should generate different values. So now you're seeing a few different values populate in there. I don't have a lot of values because I have a very short string, but you can see that there are different random numbers that are being generated by that. Last but not least, we want to build our password, and there's a couple different ways that we can do this. Our new password is going to be formed by using concatenation. So the next 3 lines of code here, you can see my new password. I'm going to add with the last letter first. I'm going to then take the middle and make it capitalized. I am going to then add a random number from the password length. I'm going to add the first letter and then add a special character. So if I run this and we see what the new password is, we'll see last letter, the middle all caps, my random number, the first letter, and then my special character. If I run it again, there will be a different variation on those when I execute that. Now, what this shows us here is how to concatenate different strings or build a string based upon different parts. Sometimes I would see that people try to put like all the code that we have up here, like they might put password.substring01 down into the code here. I don't think that is as clean and as clear to understand what's actually being done there. So we want our code to be very clear. This is pretty clear about how it's building this password. The other thing I want you to notice is I didn't run my code all the way off the screen. Like I could have kept adding on the end here, but I decided to put this assignment statement on multiple lines in order to make it easier to read. Another way to do that, and honestly maybe a better way, would be to do the following, is when I'm creating my new password, let's say I do last letter plus middle caps. I'm going to finish that line of code, and then I'm going to do new password. It's yelling at me because I already declared it. New password plus equals random number from password length. Copy that variable because it's a long one. So that will concatenate on to the end. New password plus equals, and then we're going to do first letter plus special. This would be a preferred way to do what we call building that string. Either of them will work, but you will probably see this second method more frequently. Okay. And if I execute this, we'll comment out that section of code, and then we run this. Of course, I get an error message. So, that's because I commented out my declaration initialization of that variable. So now we can run our password generator again. So we have just used several string methods in creating our new password. Let's just review them quickly. We use .length, which gives me the length of whatever string I am prefacing this with. So password.length gave me the length of the password. Special chars.length gives me the length of special chars. We used substring with 2 arguments, and then we used substring with 1 argument, and we used a substring to get first, last, and middle letters. We use the two uppercase to change part a string to uppercase. And whenever you're using the string methods, again, you have to always preface it with what string you're using, followed by the dot operator, and then the method. Then we used some random number generators in order to get some characters and generate a random number. So char at is a string method. It returns a character. The reason we were able to use it here and not have to do any special casting is because we added it or concatenated it to a string already. Same thing with our random number. And then that's how we created our new password. So reviewing those or just kind of showing you some of those different string methods will hopefully help you understand the string library a little bit more and be able to utilize that in future programs.